Why should I vaccinate my horse? Table of contents. The first topic we will discuss is what can you vaccinate for? The second is what happens if you don't vaccinate? And third is how do you get vaccinated and everything that goes along with that. What can you vaccinate for? First, our core vaccines. Core vaccines are vaccines you're supposed to take every year. For horses, the recommended core vaccines are rabies, tetanus, West Nile virus, and EEE or WEEE, which is equestrian encephalitis. One is east, the other is west. Second is risk-based vaccines. Risk-based vaccines are vaccines you should get upon the expectance and or increased likelihood of getting a disease. It's based upon if that location and or the odds of exposure are higher. These are not vaccines you should get yearly. Listed below are some risk-based vaccines you could get. For example, snake bite if you're going into an area with a high population of snakes and your horse could potentially get bit based upon the travel that you are doing. On what happens if you choose not to vaccinate your horse? Well, your horse could get sick and potentially end up with some of the core vaccination issues, such as rabies. Rabies is caused by rabies virus, which is a virus that is mainly spread through saliva of animals. This can be transmitted through bites, scratches, and open wounds. It often transmitted by wild animals, but can also be transmitted between domestic pets and livestock. For horses, you'll often see them get aggressive. They'll have hydrophobia, so they stop drinking water. You also start seeing them get startled easier. They're going to start having muscle tremors along with convulsions. You can also see them start tilting their heads and walking in circles. They can also have ataxia, so they lose their sense of balance and you'll see them fall over. They could also start going blind along with producing a lot more saliva. So the frothing of the mouth in the picture below above, you can see that the horse has lost mobility and is looking not so well. As well as they can end up with facial paralysis along with urinary incontinence and also self-mutilation because they have lost control of their body. There is no cure for rabies. If your horse gets it, it will die and or need to be put down immediately as to not spread it to other animals. Next would be tetanus, which is another thing you could vaccinate for. It's caused by Clostridium tetani, which is an aerobic bacteria that is a spore form of bacteria or spore-forming form of bacteria. It's transmitted through puncture wounds, cuts, burns, surgical wounds, animal bites and or stings, and umbilical cords of newborns. So if the mother has it, the baby could also end up with tetanus. It's often transmitted into horses through nails and or splinters, surgery, birth, and then also the soil, since it can be just in the ground, and when you have a wound on your foot, you step in it, and then it ends up there, oftentimes seen in the hooves. Some symptoms of the first 14 days end up with stiffness, overall lockjaw, and or muscle issues, so they'll have trouble eating. They'll also hinder the limbs, as seen in the picture. Along with then prolonged exposure can end up leading, or like prolonged tetanus can lead to violence, spasms, as well as bone fractures, and then again lockjaw, so they won't be able to eat. You can cure tetanus through antitoxins and antibodies, along with making sure you properly disinfect wounds that could be infected with tetanus, so making sure you have proper hoof care. This is West Nile virus. It is caused by its name, West Nile virus. It's transmitted through bites of infected mosquitoes. It can also be transferred through birth. If whoever the mother has West Nile virus, the baby can have it as well as through blood transfusion. It's through the transfer of blood that one becomes infected. In particular, it's transmitted by Culex species of mosquitoes, as well as it can be transferred through birds, and most horses in people's cases, and or just overall, it is through the mosquitoes. Some symptoms are low-grade fevers. You can also have neurological issues such as muscle twitching, impaired vision, wandering. You can also have head pressure, and then for horses, again, walking in circles, the inability to swallow, irregular gallops, lack of coordination, weakness overall, paralysis, and even convulsions. It can lead to neurological impairments for life overall for horses, which can lead to having to put them down in a lot of cases. You can use anti-inflammatory drugs to try to reduce the overall side effects, as well as you can use non-steroid drugs to also do that. However, they have to be prescribed and they will not always lead to improvements, which means your horse may have to be put down. Last up is EEE or WEE. So Eastern Equine Influenza virus is what causes EEE, and then Western Equine Influenza virus causes WEE. Eastern or EEE virus is much more deadly, having a 90% mortality rate, versus WEE has a 50% mortality rate. They are both caused by mosquito bites, however vary in what type of mosquito causes them as listed. Overall, the symptoms for WEE are much more mild than EEE. They do cause behavior changes, listlessness, depression, fevers, moderate to high, a lack of appetite overall. They also can have an increase in sensitivity to touch and sound. They can also start grinding their teeth, as well as it causes issues for the central nervous system and can cause a buildup of pressure. You can also see them have symptoms like dementia overall. For physical attributes, you can start to see them walking in circles more often, as well as you can tell that the horse has gone blind, as well as a possibility. There is no actual treatment besides having the horse fight it biologically themselves. You can help by using IV bags and just trying to minimize the swelling of the central nervous system. Again, EEE has a 90% mortality rate and WEE has a 50% mortality rate, so most likely your horse will die by this virus or these viruses, or you will have to put them down. Now that we know the risks, and those risks are most likely your horse dying, how should one go about getting vaccinated? First, this raises the question of what should you get vaccinated for? Obviously, core vaccines. They're the most recommended vaccines overall, as well as risk-based when necessary. If you think your horse will be exposed to it, get vaccinated for it. It's just better to be safe than sorry. Now that we know what to get vaccinated for, how often should you be getting vaccinated? Well, that depends on the time of the year and what type of vaccine it is. We can see in the picture below that for rabies, it is yearly, as well as for tetanus, EEE, WEE, and West Nile virus. For those, you're supposed to get 2 doses per year, of which should be 3 to 4 weeks apart for rabies and tetanus, and then 2 doses 4 to 6 weeks apart for EEE, WEE, and West Nile virus, as well as for EEE, West Nile virus, and WEE. It also depends on what season is. Since they are mosquito diseases, you should make sure you get vaccinated before that starts. So the map on the left shows when mosquito season starts per location within the United States. For us, it should be time in early April. For people in Florida, it should be early February. Now that you know what to vaccinate for and when, where should you go? In Wisconsin, there are many locations. You can go to River Valley Veterinary Clinic, listed below, as well as Belton Veterinary Clinic, also listed, and then also Athens Veterinary Service that has its contact information listed. You could also potentially vaccinate yourself. However, it is not recommended that you administer any vaccines if you're not being directly supervised and or a veterinarian. So overall, it is better to go see someone who can properly vaccinate your horse than doing it yourself. Now that you know where you're going and that you're planning on vaccinating, you're probably wondering how much this is going to cost you. Well, it's going to cost you anywhere from $65 to $100 twice a year. For example, we can look at Lima's Veterinary Clinic, which offers an $80 package for a physical exam and then all your core vaccines. You're going to have to pay for this twice though, so that's about $160 for the year. However, that is a pretty fair deal. Well, now you know where you're going and how much it costs. You might be wondering what you can do if you can't financially afford it. Well, they offer a lot of grants. All of these are linked to this page if you would like more information. First is the routine immunization through community engagement, or RICE grant, which will help you vaccinate your horse, as well as have the United Horse Coalition's monthly grant program, which will also help you do that. They also have the Home for Horses Coalition Specialty Horses Emergency Fund. There's also the AAEP Annual Vaccination Grant. There is also the U.S. Equestrian Trust Grant Opportunities. There's also the Thoroughbred Aftercare Alliance. All of these, again, are linked if you would like more information and can help you pay to immunize and or vaccinate your horses to make sure that they do not get preventable diseases. Lastly, if you would like any additional resources, I have some links to stuff. If you need any information about EEE or WEE and West Nile virus in Wisconsin and what to do if your horse gets it, it is linked below, as well as a map to show where it was spotted in 2023. It is also on the slide. The highlighted or red counties are ones that had reportable cases, as well as there is additional articles I have linked to why you should vaccinate your horse if you would like any more information. Lastly, here are my citations with links to the articles that I used to find any information. If you would like to go back and read more about any specific slide, here are the links, and thank you for watching, and I hope you vaccinate your horse.